Chapter 1. Snow Without Tracks. Snow fell like silence. Not the silence of sleep or peace, but the slow, deliberate hush of forgetting. The mountains exhaled in long sighs of wind as Arlo walked, his paws sinking with soft resistance into the white drifts that covered the trailless world. No hoofprints, no human scent, just the endless hush and the dry creak of his old joints with every step. His coat, once the color of strong wheat under summer suns, now hung heavy with age and snow. Faded white smudged his chest like smoke that had forgotten how to rise. The fur on his flanks clung to him in damp clumps, darkening where it brushed the drifts. His gait, always stately, now bore the slight tremble of long winters and longer memories. He moved slowly, not with hesitation, but with reverence. This place, this whitened wilderness, had once been alive beneath his feet. Sheep had scattered across these slopes like woolen clouds. Bells had chimed in the dusk. The shepherd's call had echoed off stone and pine. Now the only sound was the quiet collapse of snow from overburdened branches, and Arlo's breath, heavy and rasping, hanging in the air like a ghost. He stopped. The wind shifted. A scent, brittle and nearly gone, brushed past his blackened, scarred nose. Not strong, just enough to stir the quiet ash of memory. He turned slightly, amber eyes searching a patch of birch. Nothing moved, but in his bones, something stirred. He had been here before. Not recently, not in this body made heavier by time, but in another winter, years past, when his stride was long and unbroken and his world filled with purpose. He remembered a lamb, lost, squealing, the air sharp with its fear, and the way he'd leapt over snowbanks to guide it back. The cold had not mattered then. His strength was his language, his presence, his promise. The shepherd had smiled and rested a hand on his head that night, before the fire. That fire was long gone. Arlo blinked slowly. Snowflakes gathered on his lashes and melted in the heat of his eyes. He moved again, descending into the wood where the trees stood like sentinels in mourning, their limbs weighted with frost, their trunks dark with age. Each tree he passed seemed to recognize him, not with sight, but with the kind of stillness that only deep time understands. He stopped beneath a crooked pine, its base shaped by old wind and hunger. Beneath it, a patch of earth had refused to freeze, ringed in pine needles. Arlo sniffed once, lowered his muzzle, and rested briefly. Not sleep, just pause. Even in rest, he listened. To the snow, to the wind, to the silence of absence, and somewhere beneath it all, to the echo of a bell that no longer rang.
Chapter 2. The Hollow Fields. The hills rose in silence, barebacked and pale beneath a sky drained of color. Once they had rolled with movement, the shifting tide of sheep, the shepherd's shadow at dusk, the low bark of command. Now they stood like forgotten altars, windswept and grieving, no longer listening. Arlo reached the base just before midday, though the light offered no warmth. His breath steamed in bursts, his flanks rising and falling like bellows worn thin. With effort, he climbed. Each step up the slope pulled a thread from memory. There, the ash tree where a fox once lingered. There, the flat rock where pups had learned to stand watch. There, the path where the shepherd used to walk, with a staff that tapped rhythm on stone. But time had gnawed it all to bone. The grasses that greeted him were stiff and colorless, bent in obedience to the cold wind. The old fence posts, stripped from rope and rust, pointed like finger bones to nowhere. One leaned against a boulder as if tired of standing alone. Another had split, and inside the wood was black, not burned, but hollowed by time. Arlo paused beside it. He sniffed. Faint traces lived there, distant, fractured, like a scent recalled from a dream. Wool, hoof oil, bark dust, sweat. The perfumes of work and life, once sharp, now flattened into a dry echo. He turned and walked slowly along the ridgeline. No birds circled, no rabbits darted. Even the crows had grown silent. It was not the emptiness that struck Arlo, but how complete it was. The fields did not expect to be used again. They had surrendered. At a small rise where the pasture once dipped toward the stream, Arlo stopped. His nose twitched. Here, once, a lamb had died. He had found it too late, tucked beneath a hawthorn, its side caved by hunger or tooth. The shepherd had buried it with gloved hands, murmuring something to the soil that Arlo could not understand, but had never forgotten. The scent of the lamb was long gone, but Arlo remembered. Not the form of it, but the absence. His ears flicked. A sound? No, only the cracking sigh of snow peeling off the hillside. He sat, though his hind legs protested. The wind came low across the fields and pushed gently at his fur, as if asking if he was still here. He closed his eyes. Behind the lids, the shepherd's boots creaking in frost, a whistle arcing through fog, the thunder of hooves when wolves had come, the smell of fear, the press of duty, simple and true, all gone now. All dissolved in the stillness that lay heavy over these fields like snow never meant to melt. When he opened his eyes, the sun was failing behind the ridge. Its light cast long shadows across the grass, and for a moment they looked like sheeps he remembered. A line of sheep, a man in a coat, a younger dog by his side. But the moment passed, and they were just shadows again. Arlo stood, slowly. A small shiver worked its way up his spine, but he did not falter. There was nothing left here. Not for him, not for anything. He turned and began to walk. Down the hill, past the split post, toward the black edge of forest, where the pine trees waded and the world dipped into older, darker memory. The fields behind him whispered nothing.
Chapter 3. The Fir Grove in the Blood. The forest thickened like thought. Trees stood shoulder to shoulder, wrapped in cloaks of snow, their limbs bent low with time and silence. Arlo entered as if stepping into a cathedral long abandoned, reverent, slow, already aware that something here was older than him. His breath clouded in bursts before him. His paw prints left no echo. It had been hours since he left the high pastures, since the wind ceased speaking his name. In the woods, even the wind seemed afraid. The only sound was the dull thud of snow falling from high branches and the distant, untraceable crackle of ice breaking on bark. Then, a scent. It came like a splinter, sharp, wrong, alive. Not rabbit, not fox, not deer. This was heavier, closer, too warm for a place this cold. He stopped. His ears twitched, not from sound, but from instinct. Something watched him, not the trees, not the wind. He turned. There, between two leaning firs, a shape stood still. No breath, no tremble. A gray form in the blur of branches, large, lean, eyes like tarnished silver. A wolf. It had not moved, not even a blink. Nor did Arlo. The snow between them was untouched. Time, too, paused. And then, a low growl, as soft as wind beneath a door. Not threat, not warning, a claim. Arlo's body responded before thought. He lowered his head, raised his hackles. His muscles, though old and reluctant, remembered how to hold. The wolf stepped forward. Arlo did not back away. There had been other wolves before, packs that had tested the flock, eyes glowing beyond the firelight. Then his body had been stronger, his growl louder, the shepherd always nearby. Now there was only the snow and this single challenger. When the wolf lunged, it was not rage, but hunger. When Arlo met it, it was not fury, but memory. Teeth, snow, blood. A cry neither bark nor howl. They crashed like stones into frost. Arlo's shoulder struck the trunk of a pine. Bark split. Snow rained down. He bit, caught flesh, was bit, stumbled. The wolf snapped at his leg. Arlo turned, jaws locking fur and skin, and drove the wolf back with the full weight of what remained in him. And then it was over. The wolf, limping, bled from the flank. Its eyes still gleamed, but the fight was gone. It backed into the darkness between the trees and vanished like fog before sun. Arlo stood alone, chest heaving, muzzle red, hind leg trembling so fiercely he almost collapsed. Pain came slowly, not sudden like fire, but like water filling a cracked bowl. He had been wounded. His left side burned near the rib. He could not see how deep, but the blood warmed the cold briefly before freezing. He limped forward, one step, then another. He did not cry out. He had never learned how. The fir grove thickened, but ahead, a pocket of green, a low canopy where the trees had grown close enough to shield the ground. No snow reached here, only pine needles and the soft, dry hush of forest breath. Arlo entered, and the cold softened. He collapsed onto his side, not out of surrender, but necessity. His breath came fast, then slower. The scent of his own blood mingled with the sap. He licked the wound, though it hurt to twist. He rested his head on his paws. Above, the trees swayed, their branches like slow wings. Between them, a sliver of pale sky, dull with twilight. A star blinked there, or perhaps it was his own failing sight. In this hidden place, time loosened. He remembered, a fire once lit near a tent, the shepherd humming low while stirring a tin pot, the smell of cooked meat, the warmth of hands. A younger Arlo, unwounded, stretching beside his master, belly to the fire. Now only the forest remained, but it listened. Arlo's ears twitched once more, not at danger, not at ghosts, but at the pine trees breathing around him, as if they too remembered. He closed his eyes, letting the earth cradle him. Snow whispered at the edge of the grove, blood cooled into stillness. But Arlo did not sleep yet. Not yet.
Chapter 4. Ashes in the River. The world had thinned. Snow no longer fell. It hovered in the air like doubts unsure of where to land. The air was clear as ice and empty as a home abandoned too long ago. Arlo rose with difficulty. His flanks trembled. The bleeding had stopped, but the pain pulsed, deep and dull, like a stone submerged in cold water. He moved slowly, a shadow of his former self. Beneath his paws, the ground was hard, covered in brittle, frozen moss. The trees grew sparser. The air began to change. It smelled of water. And something else. Something forgotten. Distant. Human. His head jerked, not sharply but gently, with a flicker of hope that still burned even when the body knew no one was coming back. But the scent was there, the same scent, not present, not fresh, but familiar, weathered, like ash resting on stones since summer. He followed it, shivering, believing the lie that scent meant presence. The path sloped downward, The steep hills disappeared into thick gray air. Twigs cracked beneath his paws like brittle memory. Time lost its weight. Each step became a world of its own. And then, a sound. A hush not heard in a long time. Even, deep, cold. The river. It ran between stones, barely skinned with ice, like the breath of an ancient giant. Its water, gray, mirror-like, with thin threads of foam. Here, many winters ago, they would stop. He remembered how his master knelt, rolled up his sleeves, and washed his face. After that came laughter, warm, like fire in a clay hearth. Then bread, and words Arlo never understood, but always heard in their tone, "You are good." Now there were no hands, no words, no bread. Only the shadow of a scent trailing from the banks, through the years, through the smoke, through death. Arlo descended to the water. He drank, slowly, carefully. Each gulp trembled in his throat. The water was freezing, but clean. It smelled of stone, of pine, and of him. He raised his head. Across the river, nothing. Yet not emptiness. As if the one he sought had just left. A breeze swept through the valley, gentle like a sigh, and again the scent. For a moment, so clear, so real, that Arlo froze, his eyes widened, his ears lifted, and he followed it, not with thought, not with memory, but with his body. Slowly, like one who no longer fears pain. He walked along the river where water whispered and light grew faint. Shadows trailed behind him. The sky turned to ash, and the first star blinked open, as if in remembrance. And then, the old tree, twisted, black, with a hollow near its base. In that hollow lay ash. He stopped. He sniffed. It was him. Not living, not warm, but him. Here. Arlo lay down, not from exhaustion, but because there was nowhere else to go. All around, silence. The river murmured on, carrying ash, carrying years, carrying names no one called anymore. Arlo's eyes remained open, because he needed to stay a little longer to listen, a little longer to remember.
Chapter 5 Where the Earth Waits. The air was thinner now, not because of height, but because the world itself had grown quieter, more distant, as if withdrawing to make space for something final. Arlo moved with difficulty. The pain was no longer sharp. It had become a kind of silence in his limbs. He no longer felt hunger, only a stillness where once instincts stirred. He followed the river until it disappeared into the folds of the valley, until the trees grew close once more, and the trail twisted upward. Here, at the edge of everything, he came home. Not to walls or fences. Those were long gone, half-fallen, scorched, buried under ivy and snow. But he recognized the stones, the way the wind curved around the ridge, the rhythm of the place. The remnants of the cottage stood like broken teeth, blackened mud, collapsed roof, a circle of stones where the fire had once warmed bones in winter. The barn had caved in, its beams softened by rot. The gate hung crooked. But beneath the ruin, something remained. Memory. He stepped forward and the earth responded,
not in sound, but in scent, in feeling. Here he had stood watch beneath stars. Here he had barked at foxes who slunk too near. Here the shepherd had laughed, had hummed while splitting kindling. Here was his world. And now it was ending. Arlo circled once, then twice. He stopped beside the old porch, where grass now grew between the planks. With effort he lay down. The earth was cold, but not cruel. The fir trees loomed behind him, tall, ancient, unmoving. They had seen generations of storm, of snow, of silence. They would remain when breath had ceased, when paw prints had vanished. The wind passed through them like a hymn. Arlo lifted his head one last time. He did not see. He listened. To the whisper of pine needles. To the hush of snow falling from an unseen branch. To the memory of footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Human. Somewhere, far off, a bird sang. Not loudly, not brightly, just enough. Arlo exhaled, and this time did not inhale again. The forest did not cry out. The wind did not stop. The firs did not bend. But something passed through them, soft, eternal. Not loss, not grief, only return. Beneath the open sky, where the earth waits for all things to rest, Arlo lay still. The last shepherd's dog, the watcher of fields, the dreamer of rivers, the silence after the voice, and the trees kept watch where he no longer needed to.